She thought it was just an old house. She didn't know it watched her through the mirrors. And by the time she realized the truth, the house already knew her name. There are places in this world that time refuses to touch. Homes abandoned not by decay, but by fear. What you're about to hear is not fiction. It's a true story. One that has haunted generations, buried in the silence of a small New Hampshire town. The cursed diary, the secrets of Widmore House, and the soul it refused to let go. Before we begin, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel, Velvet Shadows, where real darkness lives and true terror whispers from behind closed doors. Now turn off your lights, plug in your headphones, and prepare to descend into a story you won't forget. Chapter 1. The Return to Widmore Lane. There are places in this world, places you don't find on tourist maps, places the living avoid, where the trees grow just a little too close, and silence doesn't feel peaceful. It feels watched. Down a cracked, forgotten road in rural New Hampshire sits one of those places. A house wrapped in ivy and shadow, a place the locals won't speak about, a place that doesn't forget. And on one rainy spring afternoon in 1994, Sarah Langford arrived there, and the house was waiting for her. Sarah was 27, a quiet, thoughtful woman from Boston, a schoolteacher, grounded, rational, the type who carried logic like a shield and rolled her eyes at anything supernatural. So when she received a letter claiming she had inherited a house from a great-aunt Eleanor, she thought it must be some kind of mistake. She didn't even know she had a great-aunt Eleanor. But there it was, in black and white. A lawyer in Concord confirming that she now owned the old Widmore house, a 3-story Victorian mansion tucked away near a dying town called Ashford's Hollow. She took time off work, drove through winding forest roads, and the deeper she went, the more the outside world seemed to dissolve. Cell signal vanished, the radio turned to static, and the trees thickened like a tunnel. And then she saw it, the Widmore house. It stood at the end of Widmore Lane like a forgotten monument. The paint was flaking from its bones, the windows were fogged over from the inside, and ivy twisted along the brickwork like veins beneath rotting skin. There was no welcome mat, no birds, no sound at all. Just that heavy, suffocating silence that doesn't feel empty, but full of something unseen. She should have turned around. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when something wants to be found. Sarah stepped out of the car and approached the front steps. The wood groaned beneath her weight like it hadn't been touched in years. When she turned the key in the rusted lock, it opened too easily, as though the door had been waiting. Inside, the air was cold, not musty, but heavy. Each step echoed louder than it should. The walls were lined with portraits of long-dead relatives with faces too faded to recognize. And at the center of it all, a grand staircase leading into darkness above. She explored room after room, dining hall, library, a parlor untouched since the 1930s. It felt like the house had been paused in time, but something inside had kept moving. She stayed in what must have been the master bedroom, a canopy bed, an ancient vanity, and a closet that wouldn't open no matter how hard she pulled. That night, she stopped at a gas station to grab supplies. When she casually mentioned Widmore House to the old man at the register, his face went pale. "That house? You staying there?" "Yeah, just inherited it. Strange, right? You won't sleep there long. No one ever has." Sarah smiled politely, but something in his voice made her spine crawl. She drove back in silence, through roads that seemed darker than they had an hour ago. The wind picked up. The trees looked different, and when she pulled up to the house, the porch light was on, only there was no power connected to the house. That night, Sarah lay under ancient bed sheets with her coat still on. She listened to the wind howl outside and the occasional creak of the old walls. Then, just past 3 a.m., she heard it. Kriak, kriak. 2 steps, right above her, in the empty hallway. She held her breath, gripped the blanket, told herself it was just the house settling. That's what people say, right? Old houses make noise. Yes, but old houses don't wait for you to arrive. They don't creak in rhythmic footsteps, and they don't turn the porch light on when there's no electricity. She closed her eyes and eventually drifted into a dreamless sleep. But she would soon learn. The Widmore house doesn't let its guests sleep for long. It remembers, it listens, and once it has your name, it never forgets. If you're still listening right now, you're braver than most. But we want to know how brave. So if you've made it this far, comment below. I heard the footsteps. Let's see who really dares to listen in the dark. And don't forget, like this video and subscribe to Velvet Shadows for more real stories of horror, truth, and the things that don't stay buried. Because what's coming next is just the beginning. Chapter 2, Whispers in the Floorboards. The Widmore house had been silent for decades, but now someone had entered its halls again. Someone had brought curiosity, and curiosity is the kind of thing that wakes old things up. Sarah Langford had only been in the house for 2 nights. 2 nights since the letter arrived. 2 nights since she unlocked the door to a home she never asked for and stirred whatever had been sleeping inside. At first she thought it was just the age of the place. The groaning wood, the flickering bulbs, the way every room felt like it was just holding its breath. But on the 3rd night, something changed. It began at 3:14 a.m. Not 3 o'clock, not 3:30, exactly 3:14. A single floorboard creaked above her, then another. Footsteps, pacing slowly, deliberately across the hallway overhead. Sarah sat up in bed, frozen. There was no one else in the house. At least, there shouldn't have been. She waited, breath held, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Then silence. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. When morning came, she checked every room upstairs. Nothing. No footprints, no unlocked windows. But still, she felt it. Like the house was watching her now, like it knew she was there. Later that day, she began sorting through the drawers in the upstairs study. Dust covered everything. Old legal papers, ledger books, yellowed newspaper clippings. But something caught her eye. A drawer that didn't open like the others. It was locked. She reached under the desk and felt something taped beneath. A key. Inside the drawer was an object that didn't want to be found. It was a small leather diary, cracked, brittle, almost pulsing with something unnatural. She ran her fingers across the cover. There was a name etched into it. Eleanor Widmore, 1926. Eleanor, her great-aunt, the woman she had supposedly inherited the house from. Sarah opened the diary. The first few pages were ordinary, entries about gardening, family dinners, cold winters. But then, they changed. The handwriting grew shaky, uneven, words scratched out, drawings in the margins, symbols she didn't recognize. Then, one entry, dated March 1927. He comes again tonight. I heard him under the floor, scratching, whispering my name. They all think I'm mad, but I know the truth. He's not a man, not anymore. He's part of the house now. I buried it, but it's still here, still hungry. Sarah slammed the diary shut. That night, she placed her phone on the bedside table, set it to record. She needed proof. Again, 3:14 a.m. The footsteps returned, slower this time, heavier, deliberate, pacing directly above her. And then, a dragging noise. Something was moving across the floor, something heavy, or crawling. She lay there in complete darkness, frozen, heart racing. In the morning, she listened back to the audio. Nothing for the first 3 minutes. Then, a whisper, soft, male, not hers. Return what was taken. Her blood went cold. She hadn't spoken. There was no radio, no one outside. But someone was whispering into her room, into her ear, into her mind. Sarah took the diary back to the study. She wanted to throw it away, burn it, but something stopped her, like a weight in her chest or a hand on her wrist. She placed it back in the drawer, locked it, and whispered to herself, "It's just a book." But deep down, she knew better. It wasn't just a book. It was a key to something much older than the house and much more dangerous. From that night on, the floorboards never stayed quiet. They creaked and whispered. They called her name, and sometimes, when she passed the hallway mirror, she thought she saw a shape behind her, something tall, something watching. The diary had been read, and now the house had awakened, and it remembered Eleanor. But it had Sarah now. She thought she had inherited an empty house, but what she really inherited was unfinished business, and something below the floorboards that would never let her leave. If you've made it this far, prove you're still with us. Comment below, "I heard the whisper." Let us know who's truly listening in the dark. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Velvet Shadows, where the stories are real, the screams are buried, and the house is always watching. Chapter 3: The Forgotten Grave. The truth has a habit of hiding under floorboards, behind walls, and in locked drawers. But in the Widmore house, truth was buried much deeper, and Sarah Langford was about to dig it up. After the whispers, after the footsteps, after hearing a voice that should not exist, she became obsessed. She wanted answers, needed them. And every time she tried to forget, to walk away, the diary reappeared. On the bed, on the table, even once, in the fridge. She hadn't put it there, but the message was clear. The house wanted her to read it. So she did. This time, she didn't skim. She devoured every word. March 22nd, 1927. Father says I must never go into the cellar. He says the stone beneath the floor is cursed, but I heard him chanting again. There were candles and blood. The priest never came back. I know what he did. I know where he buried the boy. Sarah's hand trembled. The cellar. She hadn't even looked down there yet. The door had been blocked by a toppled shelf since the day she arrived. Until now. She dragged the shelf away. Every movement kicked up dust that hadn't been disturbed in decades, and then she opened the door to the basement and descended into darkness. Each stair moaned. The air smelled like iron, and somewhere beneath her feet, water dripped. Slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. She reached the bottom and clicked on her flashlight. Concrete walls, exposed pipes, old wooden beams warped with time. But one wall was different. The far left corner had been sealed, not with bricks, but with wooden boards and black nails, and etched into the wall, a crude cross. Sarah dropped to her knees and began tearing the boards away. The wood cracked, splintered. Behind it was earth, fresh, looser than the rest. Something had been buried here, not long ago, or maybe not buried deep enough. She dug with her hands at first, then with a rusted trowel from the nearby shelf. Her flashlight flickered as she pulled away clumps of dirt. Then, her fingers struck wood. A small box, no larger than a child's coffin, wrapped in frayed cloth, nailed shut. She pried it open. Inside, bones, small, human, wrapped in a blood-stained quilt, and at the very bottom, a rosary, snapped in two. She stumbled back, gasping, fell against the wall. Then, the whispers returned. This time, not upstairs, not from the diary, from the earth. "I told you not to read, now you've seen what was buried." The air turned frigid, her breath fogged, and in the beam of her flashlight, something moved. A hand, pale, long, reaching up from the dirt, toward her ankle. She screamed and ran, bolted up the stairs, slammed the cellar door shut behind her, and when she turned the lock, it clicked from the inside. She had opened a door, not just into the basement, but into a memory the house had tried to bury, a secret it had kept quiet for nearly a century. But now, it remembered everything. That night, the diary had changed. New pages were filled in, written in a trembling hand. Her name appeared at the top. Sarah Langford, the new vessel. She unearthed the grave. She knows now. She's next. The next morning, she found the cellar door completely boarded shut again. By whom? She didn't know. But the hammer was sitting in the hallway, still warm. And from that moment on, Sarah never walked through the house without feeling the dirt shift beneath her feet, like something was moving beneath her. You've now seen what was buried, but not everything wants to be uncovered. If you're still listening, brave soul, comment below, "I dug too deep." Let's see who among you dares to face what lies beneath. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Velvet Shadows, where real horror breathes in every word, and truth is always 6 feet under. Chapter 4, The Face in the Mirror. Sometimes the dead whisper. Sometimes they watch. And sometimes they show you their face, only when they know you can't look away. Sarah Langford had been inside the Widmore house for 4 days, but time was bending. It no longer passed like it did outside. The nights were endless, the air too thick, and the silence full of eyes. After uncovering the bones in the basement, Sarah had tried to leave. Twice. She packed her bags, drove toward town, but the road, twisted, led her back every time. And the diary was always sitting in the passenger seat, open, waiting. The house was no longer quiet. It breathed now. Its floorboards pulsed beneath her feet, and the whispers, they had changed. They no longer begged, they warned. "He sees you now." On the 5th night, Sarah caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Just a glance, but something wasn't right. She stepped closer, and her blood ran cold. She was staring at herself, but her reflection wasn't moving. Her real hand trembled, but the reflection stood still, expressionless, frozen, eyes slightly wider than they should have been. And behind it, in the mirror's background, a shape, a tall, faceless silhouette standing just behind her reflection, motionless, waiting. She turned around. Nothing. Looked back into the mirror. Gone. She smashed the mirror. Glass flew across the hallway. But every shard still showed her reflection, and all of them were smiling. Sarah locked herself in the bedroom, pushed furniture against the door, refused to sleep. But sleep doesn't ask permission. When she finally nodded off, it was not into a dream, but into a memory that wasn't hers. She was in the mirror, but the world was reversed. Colors were wrong. Light bent sideways, and in this mirror world, the house was alive. Its walls pulsed, its ceiling breathed, and Eleanor was there. Her skin was gray, her mouth sewn shut with wire. She held out the diary to Sarah and pointed at her own face. The wires unraveled, and she whispered, "He doesn't need your voice, just your reflection." Sarah woke up screaming, sweat soaked through her shirt. She stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and when she looked up, her reflection blinked, but she didn't. She froze. watched in horror as her reflection tilted its head, grinned, and mouthed the words, "You are mine now." From that moment on, every mirror in the house became a threat, not because of what she saw, but because of what might stare back. Reflections that lingered too long, that moved slightly out of sync, that watched her even after she walked away. She covered them all, blankets, sheets, towels. But still, she felt it. Behind her, every time she turned her back. That evening, the diary had new writing in it again, her name carved over and over in a hand not her own, and beneath it, "He needs a new face. Yours will do." She tore the page out, burned it in the fireplace. The flames hissed, cracked, then turned cold blue, and from behind her, "He is in the glass." Sarah now lives in a house of reflections, a place where every mirror is a door, and every door is watching her back. The man without a face had found his window, and she had looked too long. If you've listened this far, tell us what you saw. Comment below. I saw the reflection blink. Let's see who among you still trusts the mirror in the dark. Like this video and subscribe to Velvet Shadows, where every story shows you the truth behind the veil, and every reflection might just be watching you back. Chapter 5. Velvet Shadows. There are some places you don't walk away from, some doors you can't ever close again, and some truths that stain the soul. For Sarah Langford, the Widmore house was no longer just a cursed inheritance, it had become a reflection of herself. A mirror she couldn't shatter, a memory she could no longer outrun. On the seventh night, she no longer heard the whispers. She understood them. The language was no longer foreign. It curled into her ears like an old lullaby. Something ancient, something waiting to be spoken aloud. She found herself writing again. Not in her own words, but in Eleanor's voice. The diary was back in her hands, and it no longer resisted her. I see what she saw. I feel what she felt. The house is hungry. She remembered the names, the priest, the boy, the family that came and vanished in the 1970s. She saw their faces in dreams, and then in the walls. Their eyes blinked from between the floorboards. Their hands reached from cracks in the wallpaper, and every time she looked away, she'd find herself standing in a different room, with no memory of how she got there. The house was folding her in, replacing her, piece by piece, breath by breath, until she wasn't sure who she was anymore, Sarah or Eleanor. That morning, she recorded a voice memo, a final entry. Her voice, calm, like she'd finally accepted something the rest of us couldn't see. To anyone who finds this, you must understand, the house doesn't haunt you, it becomes you. You don't leave, you become part of it. And I opened the last door. I saw him. He has no face, no voice, only silence and mirrors. And I gave him mine. He said, Velvet Shadows would remember me. She was found 2 days later, on the side of the highway, barefoot, eyes open but unblinking, clutching the diary to her chest and repeating the same phrase, "The velvet watches from the mirror." She hasn't spoken since. The Widmore house was investigated, the basement bricked up, the diary missing, the mirrors all shattered, and the video files from her phone unplayable, corrupted. Except for one, a single still frame from a grainy recording taken on her final night. It shows her in the hallway mirror. Only, her back is turned, but her reflection is facing the camera and smiling. Years later, a YouTuber named Max Owens went looking for the Widmore house. He was documenting real places you shouldn't visit for his new horror series. He uploaded one teaser, one clip, and then he vanished. The last frame of his video, the diary opening on its own, a shadow stretching across the floor, and a voice, barely audible, but if you slow it down, turn up the volume, you can hear it whisper, "You're watching now, that's enough." So remember, you don't have to enter the house for the house to enter you. You just have to look too long, listen too closely, or comment too late. And if you're still listening, still breathing, still brave enough, comment below, "I gave him my reflection." We'll be watching the comments for the ones the house has chosen. Subscribe to Velvet Shadows, where the stories are real, and sometimes they watch back.